came to do.
Hey,
You know what we came to do?
Look, I'm in a league of my own. Y'all need to leave it alone. I'ma just eat everything. I'ma just leave you the bones. Call it an even exchange. There ain't no need to explain. Yeah, it should be overstood. Like when I hop on a plane and I fly over your hood. Y'all should be knocking on wood. Don't make me go against the grain. I ate my Wheaties, I'm good.
We know how prolific you like offense and your ideas for the performance of this year Jaguars offense. On a scale from 1 to 10, with 10 being the highly dynamic, high-scoring offense that you desire, where is your offense now?
I said a 4. We haven't tipped the scale. You're talking about in 2 weeks, we only put up 24 points. That's not something that you got to pride yourself on. Yeah, you just need one more point than the next opponent to win the game. There's no question about it, but I feel we have the weapons and we have the tools to get the things that we need to get done. Now, that still falls up on me. There's some things that we got to do. Because I say we're at a 4, that doesn't mean that the player's not going out there and they're not practicing hard. They're not doing the things that's conducive. I got to put them in a better situation to have a better outcome. That's the way I look at it. When I look at myself, I don't look at anyone else. I look in the mirror, and the mirror reflects me. Some of the things I need to do. I got to make the adjustment. I got to be able to do the things that's going to bring us to be that type of offense that I already visioned that we are.
And Coach, you're playing your.
All right, so that was Eric Dooley talking about the Southern Jaguar offense and where they need to be. He said that they are a 4 in his eyes out of 10. So, hey, that's straight out of the head coach's mouth. So take it for what it is. But it's your boy Kelly Flicks. I'm back with another episode of HBCU Flicks. Excited to be back. Had kind of a long weekend. It's going to be somewhat of a different show, right? We're not going to get straight into a whole bunch of recap, but I'm going to recap the different things that we need to talk about, right? The real things we got to talk about. So I just put out a new top 10 HBCU quarterback list. We're going to get into that. I'll break it down from the Division I side and from the Division II side, right? We got 5 Division I quarterbacks in there that I think are very good. Okay, we're going to talk about the SWAC. I was talking about the SWAC, how terrible their non-conference record is. They've only won 3 non-conference games so far, which is not very good to anybody's standards. And then also we got my weekly awards, right? We got Offensive Player of the Week. We got the Defensive Player of the Week. Those 2 guys, one from Division II level, one from Division I level, guys who I think are going to have very good seasons, right? And I think you just open up the season and get things going early. Guy like Jordan Toles out there from Morgan State, definitely going to be mentioned. So without further ado, we're going to get into my weekly awards, for this week. Well, actually, before we do weekly awards, let's do a quick Did You Know? Get into some Did You Know stuff, right? Can't go too fast. Slow it up, Flicks. Can't go too fast. So let's do some Did You Know. Here we go. Some Did You Know Week 2 presented by my boys HBCU FC. We got a Did You Know segment, man. So here we go. Did you know the most passing yards this week by HBCU player was by Jeremy Musa of Florida A&M. He threw for 362 passing yards against the University of South Florida. He got it up there. He let go of the ball. Ryan Morrow of Alabama A&M rushed for 191 yards against Lane College this past weekend. Shout out to Ryan Morrow. The most receiving yards this week was Malachi Langley of Lincoln, Pennsylvania. He caught 7 catches for 197 yards. Really opened things up for Isaiah Freeman. Okay, the highest completion percentage this week should be no surprise to anybody. Bethune-Cookman played Savannah State, and Luke Sprague threw for 79% completion percentage. Pretty good by Luke, pretty good. And then, of course, Howard had the most touchdowns of the week with 9 against Morehouse. And he also had the most team yards and 613 yards. They went absolutely crazy on Morehouse. So, poor Morehouse. But Howard did what they were supposed to do, playing against a Division II opponent. So, we'll get into some more Did You Know later on. But for now, did you know that Joel Felder ran for 151 yards this past weekend against UNC Pembroke? Right? They got a very big win. West Virginia State got a very big win against UNC Pembroke this past weekend with a lot of help from this guy back here, running back, Joel Felder. He ran for 16 times, 151 yards, and 1 touchdown. He was a game breaker. I talked about his sidekick, or not a sidekick, his homie in the backfield, Donovan Riddick, another guy I'll be talking about in the top 10 quarterbacks. He also did well, and he played well in week 1. But another guy that's also been consistent is Joel Felder. I think Joel Felder and Donovan Riddick make for a pretty nasty, dynamic duo back there for West Virginia State. I think they could make a run for the playoffs this year, right? The past 2 years, they've ended their season at around 7 and 6 wins. Can they get over the hump? Can this duo get them over the hump? Well, this past weekend, it worked out. And the weekend before that, they almost beat FCS Moorhead, right? They only lost by about 5 points. So keep an eye out for this West Virginia State team. Another team to keep an eye out on is Morgan State. And they got a game breaker back there at safety, Jordan Toles. This guy transferred from LSU 2 years ago. This year, his second year under Coach Damon Wilson, I think he's about to break out of his shell, right? I wanted to see him catch the ball more. I wanted to see him play better in coverage, and he's starting to do that. He had 2 interceptions against the University of Akron this past weekend. He also had 6 tackles. Jordan Toles caught the interception that could have sealed the game for Morgan State if it wasn't for a fumble with 40 seconds left, right? Jordan Toles made all the winning plays you're supposed to in this game. Jordan Toles is beginning to take that next step that we've been wanting to see, right? I think as a safety, he's a very hard-hitting safety. He's more of a box guy. I think last year he was a little kind of forced into that free safety role given the depth at Morgan State. So he played his role like he was supposed to. But I think this year he's really worked on his coverage skills. He already has good ball skills. He has a very good knack for the ball when the ball's around. So he already has that, right? But technique-wise, I see improvements. He is in better position this year, right? I think Jordan Toles is primed for a breakout year, and I think Coach Dan Wilson just absolutely unleashes him. This defensive backfield at Morgan State is absolutely loaded. If you're talking about Decius, Brandon Savage, Javion Morton, there's plenty of guys. Keith Gooden. There's too many defensive backs out there, so I can see them all playing together on the field at the same time, right? If you have a lot of versatile players, guys like Jordan Toles that can go back there as safety, come down into the maybe even the nickel sometimes in run support, or maybe come down into box safety. Jordan Toles gives you that on defense. So absolute studs, man. Joel Felder and Jordan Toles absolutely get it done. Let's get into these SWAC woes, man. So the SWAC. Let's get into the SWAC. It ain't looking good, buddy. I'm not going to lie. Before I got into this HBCU space, a lot of people would always push back on my notion that I think that the SWAC is one of the top 5 FCS conferences in the land. People would push back on that, right? And they push back with a lot of facts. And the facts being that the SWAC don't win very many out-of-conference games. They don't fare very well against them. This year, they are 3-13. We are in week 3, guys, and the SWAC is 3-13 in non-conference. And look, the outlier could be the Power 5 games, but there aren't very many Power 5 games, and that's the problem, right? A lot of these SWAC losses this year are a combination of FCS losses and Division II losses, right? This past week, another SWAC team lost to a Division II team. Alabama State lost to Miles College. It's not to say that Miles College isn't a decent Division II program. And look, I understand. I do think that the talent levels are beginning to even out due to the transfer portal between Division I and Division II. I understand all those things. But Alabama State was a team that was looking to contend for the SWAC conference. If you're looking to beat 7 to 8 Division I teams a year, you shouldn't be losing to Division II teams, right? You should be more prepared than that. And I think Alabama State was upset, right? Miles was not the favorite going into this game. Alabama State should have won, but they were upset. My problem is this. If you are Alabama State and you are being allocated all these funds for football and you have more scholarships than Miles, coming into this game, even though people look at you like you're supposed to win, on the field, I need to see some more domination. Up front, Alabama State was pushed back way too often. I did not see their defensive line get very much penetration. You only ended the day with 2 sacks against the Division II team. 2 sacks, right? You're FCS. I know a lot of these guys want to play in the NFL next year, right, and follow the Brandon Gaddy footsteps, Nelson Jordan footsteps. But no, I just don't see it. So we're talking about the competition level as far as the SWAC. I think the SWAC has a lot of great players, right? I think what the SWAC may be lacking, honestly, is coaching. Quite honestly, coaching. They asked Willie Simmons after the game against University of South Florida, like, what's the big difference between FCS and, like, Group of 5? What's the difference in skill level? And he says no real difference in skill level. The difference is in coaching. It's about how you call the plays and win the games. So looking past that game, right? The Division II game, very hard to look past that. And, I kind of wish I was live so I can hear what everybody else got to say about this shit because it's unbelievable. But it is what it is. Because in week 1, Mississippi Valley, another SWAC school, lose to Central State, another SIAC school in Chicago, right? And look, a lot could be said about the circumstances in which they were playing that game, but both teams got on the field and agreed to play, and the Division I team lost. It's disappointing. Honestly, if you want to look at the SWAC as one of the upper echelon conferences, their commissioner called them a super conference. What super conference is losing the Division II teams? I can't name one. I can't name one. Love the SWAC, but yeah, come on. This week, 7 losses, right? You see on the final scoreboard up there were 7 losses this week. I think the biggest takeaway from these couple weeks and seeing this non-conference record is that, number one, the SWAC West is not very good at all. Like I said a couple months ago, Prairie View A&M is the best team in the SWAC West, hands down. Southern doesn't look the part. They can't be the SWAC East team to save their life. They lose to Alabama State, lose to Jackson State. Combined, they only have like 28 points this year. I don't see it from Southern. When you go ahead and look at Alcorn State, their inconsistencies at quarterback are what really going to hinder them from really making a big step and going to the SWAC championship. Tyler Macon has looked good at times on the ground. I haven't seen it with his arm, and I'm starting to get worried. I'm be honest, I'm starting to get worried. Week 1, Southern miss. Okay, that's difficult. He doesn't get any completions, though, right? 0 for 5. Aaron Allen comes in, completes a couple balls. Game 2, they play Stephen F. Austin. Tyler Macon goes in, completes a couple passes, maybe about 3 passes, has a couple different read option keeps, which opens up the offense a lot, right? Alcorn State offense looked very much opened up completely when Tyler Macon keeps the ball, right, on read options. It looked good. That was pretty good for the first couple drives. But then he goes down. He's injured now. Now he has ankle issues. Now he can't return to the game. Aaron Allen is now the quarterback. Look, if Tyler Macon has to sit out the next 2 games so he can be healthy for the rest of the season, do that. Because if I'm Alcorn, the original game plan going into this season of we're just going to bully everybody and push them around, I don't think it's going to work. I don't think it's going to work. Last year, everybody knew the ball was going to Jarvian Howard, but they couldn't stop him. This year, everybody's knowing the ball's going to Jarvian Howard, and they're daring Alcorn to pass the ball. Simply put, they're daring them to pass the ball. Every defensive player is looking at Jarvian Howard every play, man. Every play. They're just waiting for him to start running the ball, and when they do, they crash. The reason why Tyler Macon has such big open read option keeps is the fact that everybody's crashing on Jarvian Howard. Aaron Allen does not keep the ball on read option. So they can crash and it'll be all good. Everybody can get in the paint. Everybody get in the trenches with Jarvian Howard, bring him down. But when Tyler Macon keeps the ball, that changes Alcorn's offense. When Alcorn can get into this read option RPO and not only fake the ball Jarvian Howard, but pass the ball downfield is when I will actually think Alcorn's a threat. But until then, no. No, Alcorn's not a threat. Good defense. Very good defense. That crackhead D that G talks about is very good. But offensively, I'm not scared. I'm not scared. We'll focus on the run and we'll go from there. But I'm not scared. I would honestly dare you to beat me in the air. I dare you to throw for more than 200 yards against me. I'd run man, stay off at about 5 yards, maybe even cover 1 damn near, right? We're looking at the running back and the quarterback the whole time, man. So going through the SWAC West, Alcorn, you need more balance on offense. Southern need to find an offense. I've said for weeks that I don't think Harold Blood can read any defense other than a cover 2. He doesn't work his progressions very well outside of cover 2 defenses, right? In cover 2, he can read it, right? I think I may have said that wrong. He can read cover 2. Everything else, he can't read. He reads cover 2 just fine. He'll throw to the deep outs. He'll throw to the deep over routes. He'll throw to whatever the defense gives him when he sees cover 2. When he sees man, he's very inaccurate. He wants to put the ball just in the vicinity of the receiver, not to the receiver, in the vicinity of the receiver. We saw that this past week versus Jackson. A lot of those deep balls, the ones that sailed out of bounds and things like that, he puts the ball in the vicinity, but he doesn't put it on the receiver. I think that's a confidence thing. And Southern's offense hasn't been able to get the run game going. As good as these running backs are, I have not seen them. I've seen Quarles a little bit. I haven't seen Kobe Dillon in 2 years. If Southern wants to show me something offensively, and, Coach Dooley is this offensive guru of sorts, I'd like to see Southern actually establish the run one of these games. Like, just one of them. Because Kendrick Rhymes looks good back there. Maybe we just force feed him. If Harold Blood is not accurate, maybe we live on the ground. Why don't we try that? Because Harold Blood is actually a decent runner, right? When he has to scramble out of the pocket, he brings his eyes down sometimes. He has a hard time escaping the pocket. But in straight run situations, RPO situations, read option situations, quarterback power situations, I think Harold Blood might excel. He's a decent runner. Work to his strengths. If you aren't going to pull him, work to his strengths. Continuing to have Harold Blood read defenses and try to take progressions on these deeper patterns is not going to help Harold Blood's progression. I get it. He's a graduate senior. You expect him to break down these defenses fast. You expect him to be a fast processor, but he's not. He's not these things that you think he is, Coach Dooley. And at the end of the day, if you don't work to Harold Blood's strengths, this is going to be a very long season for Southern. A very long season. And I'll stand on that. Texas Southern, you need Andrew Body healthy. I'm going through the whole SWAC West right now. Texas Southern, you need Andrew Body healthy. Without Andrew Body, this is not the Texas Southern we know and love. Without Andrew Body, I mean, what's it all for, right? Like, what's it all for? At the end of the day, we've built this offense around Andrew Body, Quay Davis, and the running back core at Texas Southern. If you can't get Andrew Body out there and have him healthy, the offense loses its value. I think that's the best way to put it. The offense, Texas Southern's offense, loses its value when Andrew Body is not on the field. With Texas Southern, with Andrew Body on the field, I'd say this year, the potential of this Texas Southern offense, I would say like around 86, right, out of 100, right? Without him on the field, though, the potential of this offense is like a 76, 78. It's pretty low. So I think he has to be on the field. If he's not healthy, get him healthy, get him back on the field. A lot of the things I was talking about in the first week about Andrew Body's velocity when throwing the ball against Prairie View A&M, I've now heard that has to do with his injury. So get him healthy, get him out there, and I'd like to see Texas Southern win some games this year with Andrew Body. The offensive playbook looks much more opened up. I criticized offensive coordinator last year. I mean, for how his play calling was last year, he's looked very good this year. I like Texas Southern offense. I think it's fully opened up for Andrew Body. He has to take advantage of it. He needs to be healthy. All right, UAPB. Not much to say about y'all, man. Y'all play hard, but you just aren't talented enough to win ball games at this point. Jalen Macon, that quarterback, he looks all right. He shows some poise, but he got beat around a lot last week against Tennessee State. I think UAPB is like a year or two away. I think they're really lacking the talent. I like their running back. I think his name is Dufries. Very good running back. Young guy, freshman, looks good out there. But, I don't see it, UAPB. But Grambling, getting to Grambling. Grambling has the best offense in the SWAC. The best offense. But they also have the worst defense in the SWAC. The worst defense. So it's kind of giving me Washington State vibes. It's giving me somewhat Oregon vibes where you go, okay, that's a great-looking offense you got there, right? And then you look at the defense, you go, wow, I see how your offense got so good. I see how that offense got that good. Because they're going to be on the field a lot. This defense gives up a lot of big plays. Grambling, I'm not judging by your LSU performance. I'm not. The first quarter, you look good. Good job, Grambling. Kudos to you guys. Week 1, I think you guys showed what you are. A great offensive team, a very bad defensive team. A defensive team that has a lot of lapses. Even in the LSU game, we still saw a lot of those lapses. Wide open guys running down for streaks. Wide open guys on a lot of pass patterns, pass routes. Because it's kind of weird to diagnose the defense what's the actual problem because there are so many blown coverages to a lot of these big plays. So it's kind of like, well, if he was in position, maybe that big play wouldn't have happened, right? And the rest, that drive doesn't even matter. But it did happen. The lapses do continue to happen and continue to be a thorn in the side of Grambling. Defensively, if you don't tune up and become more disciplined, you guys are going to fall victim to some ugly losses. Right, because we haven't seen Miles Crowley turn the ball over very much, and I don't expect him to do that. But I mean, in these games, he hasn't turned the ball over very much, and defense still hasn't stopped very much anything. Miles Crowley is going to be left out there to honestly put up 50 points a game for Grambling if the defense doesn't get better, which is a shame. Okay, then switching over to SWAC East, not much to say about you guys on the East side, but I will say I don't see a clear-cut winner in the SWAC. I thought it was FAMU. I did. I thought that FAMU was our runaway favorite. But the inconsistencies on offense are making me think twice about FAMU. All right, they look good on paper, right? And we could say whoever should win based on what they look like on paper. But when you watch these games, the inaccuracy by Jeremy Musa scares me, right? This defense at times, the defensive backs get burnt. They get burnt. They got burnt versus Jackson State. They got burnt by University of South Florida. This week they got a receiver coming in that's going to play against them named John Giles at West Florida. He can go. It's going to be a test, right? With this FAMU team, this past 3 years, they've won 9 straight games, right? They won 9 games. Come out looking like a very competitive and like a playoff-worthy team. Now, I think the difference in a playoff team and a non-playoff team, FCS-wise, has to be defensively getting stops and offensively being able to move the ball and get third downs, right? It's a winning program. That's all I'm basically explaining to you guys. It's a winning program. That's an FCS playoff team. So I think FAMU is that, right? I think they're a winning program. They have a pretty good defense that can get off the field at times. They have offense that can move the ball when they want to. Now, the issues with the inconsistencies, that's where my alarm bells go off, right? Because they have some games where these inconsistencies will work against them, right? And that's going to be later in the season. October 21st, they play at Texas Southern, a team that has an offense. Like, they have an offense. The offense will score points against you. If Jeremy Musa comes out and throws a couple picks or starts off slow, and now all of a sudden FAMU is down 21-3 going into halftime, when you got to sew up the SWAC and finish up games and become the SWAC East champion, you can't get yourself into situations like that, right? You can't. I'd like to be much more confident in these games going into it, but I honestly have apprehensions because I feel like FAMU puts themselves in tough situations that they have to crawl out of. And we haven't seen it affect their team much now, but it could during the end of the season. Because after Texas Southern, they play versus Prairie A&M. It's going to be at Bragg, but Prairie A&M, to me, is one of the most complete teams in the SWAC, and I think they'll probably come out of the SWAC West. So with that being said, if I think they're the best team in the SWAC West and they're going to play FAMU before the SWAC championship, they could give FAMU a L. If you're looking at it that way. So a little worried about FAMU. Not sure if they're those guys. They have the talent to do it, though. On paper, if chemistry aside, if you could just go on paper, you'll say, oh, that's the most talented team out there. That's the best team in the SWAC. There's no way they should lose to any team in the SWAC. But you look out on the field and you watch the play. Jeremy Musa, I understand that this year you're spreading the ball around a little bit more, but now your accuracy issues are coming about, right? Before, when you were mostly throwing to Xavier Smith ends the season with plus 60 catches. I think you got a good vibe for Xavier Smith. You guys had very good chemistry. You have to build that chemistry with these other receivers. It's K-Dots, the Marcus Rileys, the Kareem Burks, all those guys, right? Because they're also of similar ilk. They're from the Rag Boys. This is the Rag Boys 2.0. This is what they do. So I need Jeremy Musa to dial it in and really get the ball to those different receivers. He's missing them, honestly. He's just missing them. He's missing touchdowns. He's forcing the ball late for interceptions, and it seems like he's pressing. You shouldn't really press when you have all these weapons, right? Just get it to him slowly and take what the defense gives you, Jeremy Musa. Anything else for the SWAC? All right. This past weekend, they have 3 FBS losses, 3 FCS losses. FCS is in Texas, not Texas, Stephen F. Austin, Abilene Christian, and Tennessee State. 3 FCS losses. And this week they were 2-7. They have 2 wins against Division II opponents. And I didn't count Jackson State or Southern because it's a non-conference SWAC game. So, yeah, SWAC, you've got to step it up. We got to find a way to get out of this non-conference slump. And it seems like it's been slumping for years now. And, nobody pays attention to it. And everybody will say, oh, well, the SWAC is, so tough. And SWAC play is going to be hard. So we're, hiding our hands so that we don't show everything. And, look, I'm going to be real with you. Why would you hide your hand and not win a game? You can, if you have a playbook, like most of these colleges do, a full playbook, you can hide your hand and still win games. So after the game, I don't want to hear none of this about I'm hiding my hand or we don't want to show all of everything we got because SWAC play come. Look, bro, if you can't beat the FCS opponent, you probably need to bring out all the tricks in the damn bag, homie. Because guess what the SWAC is? That's an FCS opponent too. It's no way you just turn it on because the SWAC is out here today. That hasn't happened. It's never happened. So I've been hearing that point. I don't like that point. Trying to hold plays for SWAC play and this and that. We don't care. We just care about the SWAC, and I don't like that. Because football is football, and you come out every game to win. And if you're not playing to win, from a coach's perspective, if a player comes out there and is not trying to win and says, "Oh, coach, I don't want to show all my routes, and I don't need to show him that because we got SWAC play coming up," you would look at him like, "What the hell is wrong with you?" Right? Because you're trying to win the game. From a player's perspective, if my coach is saying, "Oh, we don't want to use that play because we don't want to show the SWAC this and that," aren't you trying to win? Is this game not winnable? If it's not winnable, just tell me that, coach, because maybe we shouldn't even play it. All right? Philosophies, man. So, got into my MVPs. Let's get into my top 10 quarterbacks. All right, we're at the 26 minutes. Yeah, one of them, man. So, shout out to everybody that's tuned in. Of course, this is pre-recorded. So, sorry for everybody in the chat. I'll probably hop in the chat, talk with y'all. But top 10 HBCU quarterbacks. Let's get to it. First things first. I think Miles Crawley is the best quarterback in the SWAC. Yeah. I think he's better than Jeremy Musa. I think he is. It's early, but I think he is. The same way I thought Jeremy Musa was very good at this point in the season last year, right? And look, the more we see these players, the more holes in their game we'll find, the more problems we'll find, mechanical errors we'll find, and that's just fine, right? Because these players are in college. They're still developing. They're getting better and better, but they're at the top of their game right now. So, speaking of the top of their game, Miles Crawley did a pretty good job against LSU this past weekend. Miles Crawley threw 14 for 25, 148 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Interception was off a drop, so, it is what it is, but gotta let you guys know that. So Miles Crawley looked pretty good this past weekend against LSU. I think he had a good showing for these scouts and looked good against Power 5 competition. Lamborghini Williams also out there looked good and running back for Grambling, but beside the point. Miles Crawley, to me, is continuing to develop as a good quarterback. So, Flicks, why do you say that Miles Crawley is the best quarterback in the SWAC? Well, he's the best decision maker, in my opinion. I think that through these 2 games, and even last year he had pretty good decision making, but through these 2 games, I've seen Miles Crawley make very good decisions. I've seen him be in control of an offense, and I've seen him look as though he has the strongest arm in the SWAC, point blank, period. When I look into what makes a top quarterback or a top quarterback in a SWAC at least, number 1 has to be his accuracy and completion percentage, right? Number 2 would have to be his arm strength. And number 3 would have to be his processing ability. At the line of scrimmage or even in game, how does he process? And Miles Crawley doesn't make too many bad decisions because he's a very fast processor. You got to love it at the line of scrimmage. A guy that knows what's going on, understands everything that could possibly happen, and still reacts in the best way for the team is my quarterback. And that's what Miles Crawley does every game. So I think you just pay attention to Miles Crawley. You'll notice it more and more, given the size. He checks all the boxes. All the boxes. I think not all SWAC quarterbacks do that, but Miles Crawley does. So I skipped to ask number 1, Davius Richard. Because Davius Richard, we're going to have a real talk about Davius Richard and his play and his style of play. Because it's different, right? And it's more of the, I wouldn't say new style, but it's a dual threat. It's a dual threat quarterback. He's different than every quarterback on this list because he uses legs much more. So with Miles Crawley this past weekend, he threw 15 for 23 for 127 yards, 0 passing touchdowns, 0 interceptions, right? But you tally that up with his rushing stats, right? And he has 2 rushing touchdowns, and he rushes for 95 yards. So here's the thing with Davius Richard to me. I think that the box score may never do Davius Richard justice because he is a gamer. He's a gamer. He wants to win the game. He plays to win. He doesn't simply play football from a perspective of I want to even say like that because these other players don't play like that, right? That would be a negative indictment on those guys. I think that Davius Richard he takes what the defense gives him, and he makes a smart play, right? I think he's a very cerebral quarterback. I think when it comes to Davius Richard, his playing style, he's going to make the right play every time, which is actually what you want out of your quarterback, right? And I have him at my number one quarterback, and from my perspective, sitting behind the computers and behind the TV screens, I want to have Davius Richard throw for 250 a game, run for 150 a game. But in actuality, he doesn't have to do that to win games. They just beat North Carolina A&T like 33-14, right? So this stat line just got him 33 points. So as much as I'd love his stats to be super padded and super crazy for me to sit here and tell y'all that he's better than Joe Milton and all these other things, but the fact is that they aren't, right? And you take Davius Richard for what he is, right? And that's really a game changer at quarterback, and he's a winner. He gets away with winning. That's what he does. That's what he's worried about. That's what the team's worried about. So coming up this weekend, Davius Richard has a big game against UCLA. UCLA team has a very good front seven. I think UCLA will make Davius Richard make plays through the air. And I'm going to be at the game. I'll be there. Don't worry about nothing. I'll be there. I got y'all covered with everything. But I think UCLA is really going to make Davius Richard have to beat them through the air. So with that being said, I'd like to see Devin Smith and a lot of these other North Carolina Central receivers get open, make some space out there, and really be able to showcase Davius Richard. Last year, Alabama State traveled to UCLA. Demetrius Davis, Miles Crowley got chances to go against UCLA's defense and look decent. Ended up losing like 45-7, but the quarterbacks look decent. I don't expect Central to win, and I'll talk about this in the pre-show. I don't expect them to win, but I expect Davius Richard to throw for at least 100 passing yards, right? And I expect him to rush for a touchdown. That is about where I have Davius Richard at right now for this weekend. I'll get more into the pregame show and really give y'all a good look at what I think Davius Richard will come out with projected. But I think at minimum, looking at about 100 passing yards, 1 rush and touchdown. That's around Davius Richard. Jeremy Musa, Florida A&M. He passed for the most yards HBCU football this week, 374 passing yards, 24 for 43 passing, 3 interceptions. It's a lot to take in. Probably got to see the game for yourself to really get a good feel for what Jeremy Musa looked like this past weekend. If you go by the yards, you say he played great. If you go by the interceptions, you say he played terrible. If you go by the touchdowns, you say he didn't do enough to win. So, what are my takeaways? Flicks, my takeaways are this. Jeremy Musa has shown that he has the volume to be one of the best quarterbacks in HBC football. He's shown that. With his arm, he can have the volume, right? I think this guy can throw for 500 yards. Quite honestly, I think he's a guy that can do that with his arm. Now, the issues with Jeremy Musa is in his decision-making, right? I think that he has found some of his keys. He likes Jamari Shareed a lot. He also, it seems like he likes Marcus Riley a lot on deep balls, which is good. But he's unable to connect at times with the things that he wants and what he wants on the field, right? And I really see that as a quarterback that's a leader, but also a quarterback that's maybe taking too many risks, right? And I understand this. Coach Willie Simmons has given Jeremy Musa the keys to the car, right? Go ahead, drive it. Do what you want to do. Just keep it on the road. I get that. And FAMU, look, he's kept them on the road. They beat Jackson State. They have a tough loss to South Florida. Lose by 2 touchdowns to South Florida. The problem, though, is that I feel like sometimes, and it's bitten Jeremy Musa in the butt, is that Jeremy Musa plays a little bit too on the edge now. I think that there are times where he takes some shots where I go, well, couldn't we just eat it and wait for the next play? I think that I'm not sure how to explain it, but I don't think Jeremy Musa is pressing right now. I don't feel like he's pressing. I feel like he may be a little overconfident in his arm because he isn't making those plays and his accuracy isn't really as good as it should be. So I think that he's really over-relying on his arm strength to get him in certain places and get him in certain spaces, but I don't see that paying off for him at this point. And I think that's leading to some of his overthrows. I think that a lot of times he's airmailing it over these smaller receivers because of that. And I think he's literally just trusting his arm a little bit too much, and he has to fall back on his technique to simply make the play, right? Just get the ball to the Rack boys and let them go. But first, you got to get the ball to them. So Jeremy Musa had a mixed bag this weekend. There are some very good takeaways from this game. He looked very good volume-wise, passing the ball. Was able to continue to play 4 quarters. Right, I want to see him play 4 quarters. We didn't see that in game 1. He played 4 quarters against South Florida. ups and downs. He took it. But the interceptions. We got to get the interceptions down if we want to be a SWAC championship contender. I understand it's South Florida, but also understand South Florida was not that good. They look like an FCS program. Keep it B. All right. So lastly, we got Quentin Williams on our Division I quarterbacks. Quentin Williams is kind of hard to scout in this game this past weekend. They just played Morehouse, put a slacking on Morehouse, 9 touchdowns. Pretty much did whatever they wanted to do. Casey Hawthorne has like 150 yards all-purpose against them. So it's hard to take much from that game. What I will take going into this next game, Howard versus Hampton, is the fact that Quentin Williams has shown that he would like to play in these big games. Right? As much as I have shown criticism of Quentin Williams in the Eastern Michigan game, he was up for the challenge. He was absolutely up for the challenge. He stayed in that pocket. He continued to make good throws throughout the game. Even though he struggled with inaccuracy at times, I see a guy that wants to go out there and win. And it's hard to go against that. He's still in my top 5 until he proves otherwise. So, moving on to Division II. We'll go Division II. We'll wrap this show up. But with Division II, of course, my guy Kelvin Durham's up top. But we have a new entry to my Division II list. Oh, actually, hold on 1 second. See, they don't call me the coalition for that. That's why they call people. I see why they call people the coalition now. I missed out on Jason Brown. My bad, guys. So Jason Brown, Jackson State University. I do have to dive into him. Pause. He's also a new entry to this list. Jason Brown, quarterback at Jackson State, was previously at Virginia Tech, South Carolina, and at school up in the FCS in the Northeast. Sorry, the school name eludes me right now. Sorry, I'm a coalition member, just sometimes. But anyway, he did pretty well this past weekend. When I look at Jason Brown, I look at a guy that is limited to some respects, right? He doesn't like to run. He at times you gotta think about his accuracy and the medium routes, right? Some routes he doesn't really throw them very much, so maybe it's a confidence thing. I'm not sure, right? So all these questions around Jason Brown. That's what I'm getting to. All these questions around Jason Brown. But when he gets out there and when he has some confidence, he's hard to stop. He's hard to stop because he knows his offense very well. He knows his Maurice Harris offense very well. And you can tell that by the confidence he plays with and the speed that he plays with, right? He's not very hesitant when he goes out there and he plays football. When I look at Jason Brown, look at a guy that's very confident at quarterback. And sometimes a lot of that confidence overcomes some of his athletic impairments. Okay? So Jason Brown a lot of times puts himself in position to be the best Jason Brown that he can be. And that's what I like about Jason Brown. I don't think that he's one of the best quarterbacks in HBCU football. Top 5 for sure. Right? I mean, top 10, not top 5. Top 10 for sure. I think he has places for improvement, right? I'd like to see him throw better down the field. And look, you're throwing down to Rico Powers. He's more than likely going to come out with the ball. There's no mark on you for that. But I'd like to see you throw more downfield consistently. If you want to climb on this list, Jason Brown, to me, he can make all the throws, which is most important. He can make all the throws. He has the arm strength to do that. The next step in his progression as a quarterback, to me, is not only making big throws, because he makes some big throws versus Southern, but making more throws in that mid to intermediate range, right? Within that 10 to 15-yard range. And look, you can hit a tight end, right? You've done very good at that. You've hit a lot of tight ends in that seam, which looks pretty good. But when it comes to reading a defense, you're not reading the defense if you're throwing 1-yard routes or 50-yard routes, right? That's literally like playing. That's really like not having to read the defense. Throwing a screen, you don't have to read a defense to throw a screen. To throw a go route, you don't have to read a defense. If your receiver's faster than the defense, he can run past the defense like Rico Powers, you don't have to read the defense. So in reading the defense, it is throwing those short intermediate routes in between there. He does it at times, but I need to see it a little bit more consistently. And maybe that's just a product of Coach Maurice Harris's offensive system and scheme. Maybe he just doesn't throw very mid to intermediate passes, and maybe that just works in Jason Brown's favor. But going throughout the year, I'm going to need to see it. I'm sorry. I'm going to need to see it. I got to see if you can at least do the shit. The little 10-yard outs and stuff is cool. I need to see some over routes. I need to see something inside. So that's just for my list, man. Keep doing your thing. Keep balling out there, Jason Brown. But in order for you to move up on this list, though, I'm going to need to see a little more variety and balls that you're throwing. But let's go to Division II. Try to wrap this up now. Kelvin Durham, of course, is my guy up there, but I was introducing Edwin Klein. Edwin Klein, Peter, is pretty good, man. Big quarterback. Listed at 280 pounds at his previous school. He's drawing some comparisons to Bruce Eugene. But Edwin Klein is that guy. He's that guy. Last week, he didn't make my top 5 list. This week, he will. Right? He has a big win over Alabama State on his belt. He played better than Demetrius Davis. Other than he had one pick that was pretty unforgivable. But other than that, Edwin looked pretty good back there at quarterback, showed a lot of poise, and really sat in the face of this Division I team and beat them. Delivered. He delivered. And when it comes to being a great Division II quarterback, these games against FCS opponents show me a lot about what you are. I talked about Donovan Riddick in his game against Morehead State in Week 1 and how impressed I was and how that Division II player played against an FCS opponent. So looking at a guy like Edwin Klein, his performance versus Alabama State shows me a lot, right? And he played great against Lane, and I wish I had the film from Lane. Maybe it would have been on my list earlier. But in the film against Alabama State, what I saw was a quarterback that was very poised, a guy that's ready to sit in the pocket, ready to take those hits, and also a quarterback that's elusive enough to work the pocket and keep his eyes downfield. Circling all the way back to Harold Blood at Southern, when pressure arrived to him in the pocket, his eye level would drop immediately to the line and begin to try to juke and move around defensive linemen. When in fact, Edwin Klein, Peter, put on an absolute clinic on facing pressure. When facing pressure, Edwin Klein sat and looked pressure in his eyes, right, until the last minute, then escaped and continued his progressions as a quarterback while throwing to receivers that are now breaking down and making moves towards him. So what I saw from Edwin Klein was a guy that's composed, and he looks like a fifth-year senior. Amir Jenkins, Bowie State, the stat line this week does not do him justice, right? Throws a touchdown, throws about 3 interceptions. One of those interceptions was one-handed, right? One-hand catch, which was, hey, look, man, we seen Odell Beckham one-hand catch. So imagine this D2 kid one-hand catch from Davenport. So one of them was a one-hand catch. Another interception was the last play of the game. It was a jump ball. So, I mean, you want to win the game or not? I'd rather him throw an interception than incomplete for the game. Sorry. Like, give me a chance. So I don't hold those against Amir Jenkins, but I honestly feel like Amir Jenkins is going to tear up the CIAA. He's one of the best pure passers in the CIAA, and he throws with a lot of confidence and with a lot of velocity. I think Amir Jenkins and Bowie State are going to be super dangerous going into the CIAA this year. Coming from the non-conference, Amir Jenkins led this Bowie State team past Delaware State in Week 1. Week 2, they go to Davenport, lose a very close game to Davenport by 6 points. Going into CIAA play, I expect Amir Jenkins to break off some monster games, some 300-yard passing games. I think his arm strength is like that. And with the 2 all-conference receivers that he has out there, I think that he'll do work. Should I put this on Wi-Fi or something? All right, we look a little better now. Okay, so Donovan Riddick. I spoke about Donovan Riddick enough on this show for y'all to know who Donovan Riddick is. If you don't know about him, go look him up at this point. I've given y'all enough of the clues on Donovan Riddick. He's a guy out of West Virginia State that can sling that rock. He and Joel Felder back there are going to be problems at West Virginia State. Don't worry about nothing. So then Isaiah Freeman. Isaiah Freeman seems to be getting back on page. I'm lagging out right now, y'all. Hold on, man. I'm lagging out. I don't like this. I don't like lagging. Let's make sure everything's right. Man, we have 40 minutes. Yeah. So then Isaiah Freeman, like I was saying, with Isaiah Freeman, this is a young quarterback that's beginning to get into his bag, right? He found his receiver. Receiver just catches for almost 200 yards on 7 catches. I think he has his go-to guys. I think now it's about turning the switch on. How fast can Isaiah Freeman turn the switch on? Is it from play 1 or is it going to start in quarter 2, right? That's the big difference with Isaiah Freeman. But I definitely feel like he's going to be an absolute stud this season, and he's starting to look like it more and more. And then we got Kelvin Durham up top, my absolute number 1 Division II quarterback, same age as Isaiah Freeman. They're both sophomores. He is the guy. Fort Valley State is beginning to build their whole offense around him, and deservedly so. Deservedly so. I think that moving forward, Kelvin Durham not only has solidified his slot as the number 1 SIAC quarterback, but I think that he's going to start getting into these top Division II quarterback list, right? I think that he's that good. Let's go through some of his numbers, what he has right now so far. So far, Kelvin Durham has 486 passing yards. He's throwing on a 61 completion percentage and has 2 passing touchdowns. I think that Fort Valley this year really opens it up. Allows Kelvin Durham to simply run the offense through him. I've seen Kelvin Durham even run the ball at this point this year, which we didn't see at all last year. So with the quarterback keeps and things like that, you lose Amelia Wilson back there, running back, and still you find a way to keep it on the ground with one of your stars. So Kelvin Durham developing a rushing attack would absolutely send him into the upper echelon HBCU quarterbacks. I'm not going to lie. So he's right there. He's at the tipping point. I think he can get there. Of these Division II quarterbacks, the Division II quarterback on this list with the highest passing yards is Donovan Riddick right now. He's at 569 passing yards. Amir Jenkins trails him at 597 passing yards. The rest of these guys are just above 480 passing yards, and that's Kelvin Durham, Isaiah Freeman, Edwin Klein. Going up to the Division I list, giving out some numbers here. The quarterback with the most passing yards on this Division I list is actually Jason Brown, 622 passing yards. He's played against 2 FCS opponents, man. From there, Jeremy Moose is second, 524 passing yards. Miles Crawley is third at 450 passing yards, right? Moving on, these other two have 300 passing yards plus, and that's Davius Richard and Quinn Williams. So I've been doing a lot of my research and my homework on these things. Weekly, we'll get into this top 10 quarterback list as I continue to dissect and analyze different quarterbacks. And my whole goal of this top 10 quarterbacks list is to find a quarterback that should be drafted by the NFL. My whole goal is to find a quarterback that should be drafted in the NFL. We're going to get one of these HBCU quarterbacks drafted, man. We'll continue to provide an analysis week by week on who we think is our top 10 HBCU quarterbacks. So before we got here, we're going to do one more Did You Know? Last Did You Know? So, did you know last week? Oh, man. Did you know that the Gardener's here today? But did you know that last week Colton Adams led all of HBCU football with 17 tackles? 17 tackles. He's following up last year's career, SWAC leading tackle total, right? 17 tackles. He's currently leading the SWAC in tackles. The most sacks this past week was 2.5 sacks by Devontae Davis of Jackson State. He was absolutely getting after things back there against Southern, and really this defensive front for Jackson State was causing a lot of problems for Southern. A lot of problems. And really was the interior D-line. It wasn't even much of the edge. It was a lot of the pressure was coming to the face of Harold Blood. So also passes defended. Norfolk State, the most passes defended was by Joseph White. He had 4 passes defended. Shout out to that. The highest attendance was Grambling at LSU. Death Valley had 97,735 people there this past weekend. Sheesh. And then the fewest yards allowed was Allen University versus Columbus State. They only allowed negative 10 yards. Now look, shout out to Allen. Big shout out to Allen. Y'all know I got y'all back in the SIAC. I'm going to hold it down, even though my brethren don't like you as much. But always, Allen, I got you. So let's get out of here. This was another episode of HBCU Flicks. This week we got watch parties. Tomorrow we got the Bethune-Cookman at Miami watch party. This weekend we may not have any watch parties. It depends. We may not have any. I'm going to be at North Carolina Central at UCLA, so we might do a live watch party. Maybe I'll go live on the YouTube, Gerber, and then y'all just check me from there. We go in real live stream, right? So maybe we do that. But that's it for me on this week. It's your boy Kelly Flicks. Another episode of HBCU Flicks, and I'm out. Peace.